Confession, I acted like my ex didn't exist. I'll get to why in a minute, but I've also had it done to me, and I know that it sucks. Acting like somebody doesn't exist is one of the most painful things that you can inflict on somebody. It activates systems in our body that are meant to make us panic. We can react to the loss of somebody like it's a death. Feeling unacknowledged is painful. You may have heard of ghosting before. Ghosting is basically what we're talking about. It's when somebody just stops talking to you, stops communicating with you, just ignores you completely at the end of a relationship. It's not okay. Now, I do want to clarify that if you've only had like a couple of dates with somebody, if you're not really in a relationship, then ghosting may be appropriate. It's just the way that we live today, where sometimes you just don't want to continue talking, and that's okay. You're entitled to live your life. The problem is that very often when we're talking about ghosting, we're talking about at the end of long relationships, when people have had intimate experiences with each other, they've shared memories, it's been a relationship, like a real relationship. Emotions were involved, and somebody decided they're just going to cut off contact. It's not okay to ghost somebody at the end of a long relationship, at the end of an intimate relationship. I know, because it was pretty much done to me, and it hurt. It can put you through months of agony trying to understand, why is this person ghosting you? What can you do to get them to pay attention? Is there something wrong with you? It can play a toll on your self-esteem. I've talked about my last relationship a bit here on the channel before, but I'm going to recap a little bit now. Throughout my last relationship, my ex constantly gave me the silent treatment, and I didn't even really know why usually he was giving it. It just all of a sudden happened, and I had to guess, like, what is going on here? Why am I receiving this? And like I said, it played a number on my mind every time that he did it. I would question myself, and I would question, did I do something wrong? And then I would wonder, okay, if I didn't do something wrong, did he see something wrong? I would try to figure out, what could I do to fix the relationship? What could I do to get him to talk to me again? Because I was in this relationship because I loved him. I wanted to communicate with him, and if he was hurting, I wanted to know that so that I could do something about it. Unfortunately, this was a pattern that continued throughout our relationship, where constantly I would be given the silent treatment, and I wouldn't understand what I would do wrong, and then sometimes it would just lift. All of a sudden he was talking to me again, and again I didn't know why he was talking to me again either, so I just kind of was like left in these weird voids in my relationship where I couldn't do anything about not being spoken to, and it was really painful, and it was really hard, and it was making me feel a little bit crazy. Now, don't get me wrong here, he would communicate like basic things, very basic things, but nothing like when it came to a relationship, like no words of I love you, no signs of affection, no asking how I'm doing, no talk about how he's doing. Like, it was all very much a wall, and all I got were very small responses. I probably shouldn't have been surprised that this is the way that he continued to behave as our relationship ended and he broke up with me. We were in therapy, and I was hoping to work things out with the therapist, because this was a second therapist that we had been to, and the first one I realized was not so great, so I was hoping this one was going to bring us on the right track. And to their credit, they helped me a lot with a lot of stuff, and I've changed a lot since learning from them that I didn't learn from the first therapist. When it came to my ex, though, he wasn't so open to learning. He had just started ignoring me. He didn't return my texts, he didn't return my messages, and when he did return them, which wasn't very often, it would be like one-word answers. Of course, this made me panic. This made me freak out. We were living together. Like, I couldn't even execute my day. I couldn't plan activities because I didn't know where he was going to fit into those activities. We actually had a lot of concerts planned around this time. And when we went to these concerts, again, it was really hard to get him to plan, but he also would stand in line with me for hours and not really say anything, not talk. I would try to start conversation. I would try to make it very like easy, light conversation about life, about, you know, how are you? Are you hungry? Like, just like basic stuff, and he couldn't even do that. And as anybody who's spoken to somebody who they love, who's standing right in front of them, only to be ignored, you know how agonizing that is. To top everything off, he was avoiding therapy. He would cancel therapy appointments at the last minute. He would tell me to go on my own, and basically it was another way of avoiding me. This was hard because I wanted to get back together with him. I wanted to keep this relationship going, and all I was getting was a stone wall. Now, as I mentioned, I did this to my ex. I acted like my ex didn't exist. And the truth is that I started doing that because of everything that he was doing, because I got fed up with it eventually and I couldn't take it anymore. So he got the same thing in return. When we had to move out, when we had to do planning, what did I do? I stopped answering him because you know what? If you don't want to help me and be involved in the things that I care about for this relationship and you don't show any interest in me as a person, then you're going to get the same thing back when it comes to things that you care about. So that's the reason why I acted like my ex didn't exist, because he had treated me poorly constantly and it was in retaliation. It was a way to exert a boundary over the way that I saw things that were going, but that doesn't mean that's what's happening with you. You may not have actually been doing anything to your ex and they still acted like you don't exist. One reason why your ex may be doing this that you may not even expect is because they don't know how to communicate what they're feeling. They may be afraid to express it, or they may be afraid of how they might express it. So what they do instead is they ignore you and they ghost you, and it's not a nice thing to do, but it may be what they feel is the best thing that they can do, as the alternatives they might think are worse. Of course, to be honest, there's not that much worse than this, so it's probably not the best way for your ex to handle things. Of course, this doesn't have to be an innocent thing. They could also be acting like you don't exist to be spiteful because they're angry about something, because they feel like they are right in what they did in the relationship. They may even feel guilty about something and be taking it out on you. When someone treats us this way, especially when it's somebody that we are close to and we want to stay close to, we can very often, like I did, go scrambling to try to get their attention. In fact, some people may even behave this way to get attention from you. Now, please understand this reaction of panicking and trying to get them back. That's a normal reaction. That's a normal neurological system in your body. That's what your body is designed to do, because we are social animals. But sometimes we can get into patterns, like I did with my ex, where we continually are the one apologizing and saying that it's our fault and we're just trying to appease the situation and get back to a relationship. And basically what we're doing is we're devaluing ourselves. We're making our self-esteem go down because we're telling ourselves that what we think and how we feel doesn't really matter. We can put it aside. Don't get me wrong, a little bit of that is normal in every relationship. Cooperation and compromise is essential. But when it becomes a pattern where only one person is the person doing this, it takes a toll on your self-esteem. So what I think you should do if your ex is acting like you don't exist is to validate yourself. Don't seek attention and validation from them. Of course, communicate how you're feeling. Do it once, but after that, let that be that. Don't fall into that trap of trying to get validation or self-esteem from your ex, because that is not where you want to hinge your self-esteem on your ex. It should be hinged on yourself. You should be telling yourself positive things about yourself. You should feel good about yourself. You should know that your emotions are valid. Your emotions matter. Who you are matters. All of you is important. And your ex doesn't get to take that away because they pretend like you don't exist. If your ex did this to you, let me know how you felt about it down below. I'd like to hear.